Studio, Associate Professor John Donaldson. Thank you very much for coming in today. So, Professor, I guess try to simplify for us what the government shutdown means, as well as the U.S. budget process.
Yeah, the process is actually quite complex. The American system is based on the idea that of separation of powers, that power should not be concentrated. So in this case, you have two houses of Congress, both of which need to agree in order to pass a budget. In this case, the Republican Party that controls the lower house of Congress has decided to use that to pressure President Obama to make major changes or even to defund his his landmark healthcare policy.
So, do you see any immediate impacts of the shutdown on the man on the street in Singapore?
In Singapore, probably not. I mean, if you're going on vacation to the United States, you won't find our national monuments or national parks to be accessible. But as long as this is resolved relatively soon, the average person in Singapore won't see much of an effect.
So how different is this shutdown from the one back in 1995?
Yeah, back in 1995, Newt Gingrich also led a group of Republicans in the lower house and the House of Representatives to shut down the government, also to put pressure on President Clinton. From that day forward until today, bipartisanship and the culture that pervaded Congress of sort of working together, or at least of being civil to each other, has slowly eroded. Now that has eroded to such an extent that it's very difficult for the parties to work together.
Professor, do you see a larger problem looming in the debt ceiling, and what would be the worst case scenario for Singaporeans or this region?
For Americans, less so than Singaporeans, the budget problem is a major problem, but it's nothing compared to this debt ceiling limit. If that actually goes on, which I still think is unlikely, but if that if that debt budget ceiling is not raised, then America will not be able to pay back its budgets, not for pay back its debts it owes to people overseas, to our so the problem is not with economics. It's not that we don't have enough money. It's just that that debt ceiling needs to be raised. If that happens, then the impact will reverberate throughout the world in terms of higher interest rates, in terms of confidence in the U.S. government. That is really the worst case scenario. 2 years ago, that would have been impossible, completely off the table. Now it remains unlikely, but you can't say anymore under this current Congress that it's totally impossible.
All right, thank you very much for coming in today. It was
Thank
great
you.
speaking to you.
Thank you.
And that was Associate Professor John Donaldson on the likely impact of the U.S. shutdown here in Singapore and in the region.